Hello and welcome to this Prog Mix tutorial. Today I will be showing you how you achieve this sound with the Modern and Massive Get Good drums and the Fortin Nts amp suite. Without further ado, we'll dive right in. Let me just undock the mixer real quick, make life easier. So firstly, we'll start from the bottom up. We got the drums. They're the Get Good, Modern and Massive, as I said, and it's pretty much multied out. So I've got, well, here's and like it's all like the buses are set up. So I have a shell bus, and that's got kick, snare, toms. Overhead bus, which is just the one overhead and the hi-hat. Don't mind the some of the names. It's just kind of, I got lazy and didn't rename them, but I know what they are. But yeah, the only really important thing to note is that on the last room bus, or the last room in here, I'm pretty much taking everything out of it, and aside from the snare. The snare is actually getting boosted, and this actually gets us a really nice, big, kind of like natural room sound for the snare. If I were to solo it correctly for you. And that's just helping the snare sound really massive and explosive naturally without adding any like reverb immediately. I do add reverb, but just kind of to fill out the space in between. But yeah, we'll dive right into the drum sound. So I guess we'll just start kind of with my like top-down approach, I guess we'd call it. Let me just pop in here real quick. What we got? We'll kill the processing on these. There's nothing on them. And there's nothing on them. So this is the sound of, I believe, just the overall drum bus. Oh, I just killed the plugin. Nah. Oh, saw the room in the cymbals. This is the raw sound. And from the top down, oh, you know, I even turned the drum bus off too, actually. So that was almost completely raw. Here, I'll activate the overall drum bus for you guys. This is all this is doing. This will be pinging more once all the other tracks have the effects going through and the volume is being pushed a little more. But essentially, the compressor is just gluing the kit together, and Revival is giving it some nice top end shimmer and some low end thickness. I'll show you again once I turn everything else on. But I'll just start activating the buses I have for everything so you can kind of get a feel for how it sounds before each individual piece itself is processed. So that's the shell bus I just activated, and that's essentially a similar process. Compression in the beginning, and then just some light EQ on the outer end. This just brings some brightness to the snare and the kick, toms, and it also sucks out just some of the mids that would overall pretty much take out of most of the tracks anyway, but it's not a whole lot. It's just enough to where I can still work with them in the individual tracks. So it's just to kind of clean up the overall sound. I'll show you that off again. Kind of subtle, but in the grand scheme of things, it really helps shape the individual sounds It gets you basically a better starting point. Here's the tom bus processing. We're slamming this revival. That's responsible for a lot of the nice stick attack, as well as some nice rumbly stuff. We're also boosting some of the stick hit here at 5k. Some air on the top, just because why not? It sounds cool. We're also boosting some of the overall low end bricks, so the fundamentals are roughly around for some of these shells. And we're sucking out some more mids. Now onward we go to the overheads, and I'll just turn the overheads and the room buses on simultaneously. So they're essentially doing similar things. The overhead bus is cutting out a lot of the low stuff. You really don't need them, using them more as, treating the overheads more as spot mics than an actual overhead. And then we're hitting it with a little compression on the way in to kind of tame the snare hits. We are boosting the air and sucking out some more mids we don't need, and then a little more top end, just because this, you know, adds it in my opinion, a pleasing way. Not sure what that sounds like. They just get so dull. And it's a similar deal for the rooms, except we're kind of keeping a little bit of the low end to vibe a little. Adding some 4K, taking away a lot of that mid. These are actually getting kind of slammed here. This is the monster. The Slate Vmr. This is like a all buttons in type of sound, and this really gets it big. I'll show you what that's doing on its own. So I'm only doing like roundabout max 5 to 7 decibels of gain reduction, but it's like such an aggressive setting that it just kind of, it almost acts as if it's like parallel compression, just kind of filling out the space in the drum sound. And now I guess I'll take you, that's like pretty much just the overall bus processing for each of the pieces, and now I'm going to kind of go into it individually and show you what I've got going on for them. But already with just the bus processing, I already have a pretty solid sound. There's just some minor things I wanted to carve out and tweak. So on here we've got an EQ on the kick, kind of sucking out more of the honky mids that we really don't need. This is like the important one. If I kill that, takes out this knocky weird spot, and then up here is just a nice little boost for the like kind of like the thwackiness. That in the mix is very drastic. For helping the kick kind of cut through. And then we've got a little smash and grab as well, just kind of slamming the kick but not, you know, destroying it. So that sounds sweet. Snare, similar deals, getting rid of some mids. Not as much, just kind of like some ringy stuff I found. This one. This one. And then just boosting the top end of it a bit. Just kind of get it to stick out of the mix a little better. Got the smash and grab as well, kind of doing a similar thing I was doing to the kick. This just helps this snare hit and feel like it impacts a lot harder. Here's it off. And on. Very sweet sound. Let's go on to the toms here. Toms are kind of just, however it happens, it happens. Let me find a spot here to show you what I've got going on easier. Oh, you know what? We'll do, I think there's 3 bases there. Oops. Nah, it's just the 2. Oh, well, I'll find another one. But yeah, this is the high and the mid tom. And for that high one, we've got, after turning it on, pulling out a lot of mids. Just kind of making that fundamental a little stronger. Making less competition for that area. And then a little more compression. I could probably actually be slamming this a little harder. I don't know why this is acting as little as it is. Yeah. Huh. We could probably slam that a little more actually. Yeah. Even the heavy compression sounds pretty solid on this. Pretty transparent. But you still get that nice like attack in the very beginning. Yeah, that sounds sweet. We'll keep it there. Then we'll hit, why did I solo that? Hit the middle floor, or the higher floor tom. So turning this on, same deal. Using this to carve out a little more of the mids, since the fundamental on this guy is much lower, more around like 80-ish hertz. And then just sucking out some weird thwacky stuff I found in the high end. And then compressing again. And a similar deal, we're not doing a whole lot of gain reduction. We could probably take that a little further if we really wanted to. Like that right there. You can almost get away with that. Yeah, it's nice. Sweet deal. Now let me find a part with the lowest tom, which I think might be right here. Oh, never mind. There it is. That's annoying. There we go. Wow, the compressor's not even doing anything on this one. What was I doing? But yeah, essentially the same deal. Oh, I clicked the wrong one. Duh. Or did I? Oh, it's because it's not on. Oh my lord. Forgive me. Because my brain doesn't function properly. But yeah, essentially just doing the same old things that we were doing to the other toms. I found a weird node right here that just needed to go, that couldn't stick around, and then more compression, as you might guess. But that about sounds right for that one. Any more would kind of make it maybe feel a bit too like it's being punished too much. And that's pretty much the drum sound I'm going with. I am doing some processing on that room mic. I'll show you in a second once I loop a better part. So this is it raw, and here's with the processing. So kind of just hitting it a little bit with the compressor. Fast attack, fast release. Just kind of essentially doing a similar thing to parallel compression on this as well. Slamming it, getting a little more sustain out of it. Maxed out ratio. And then just kind of almost EQing it how I'd EQ a normal snare. Just more gradual with the moves, sucking out some weird mids, cutting out everything I don't need below, and boosting the top end to get the presence in. And that's the drum sound. Sits really well, is very balanced. But yeah, let's move on to, we'll do the guitars first because bass isn't that special. Well, it is, but not for our purposes, because we are showing off kind of what that the Fortin isn't just a balls deep metal plugin. It can very much do this as well. Now I printed these tracks, but this is what it looked like before I printed them. These are the settings I was using for it, as well as I was using channel 2, and I had both of these all the pedals going, but both the hex drive and the grind going at the same time. to get that sound. I'll solo it for you. This is also an E standard, so it may sound a little wimpy, but in the full mix it just kind of works, I guess, with the bass. It sounds really nice on the chords too. I don't really play a whole lot of chords in this segment. Just right here. Just so you get a feel of how it kind of breaks up when you really dig into it. But yeah, really the only processing I'm doing on the guitars, since the tone going in is honestly amazing. I love that NTS plugin. Yeah, just high-low pass and sucking out some very minor, you know, just build-ups. I could also use a multi-band to kind of just tame those on the palm mute, since there's a lot of them. But since there is a lot of them, I figured just cut it out, since it's pretty much going for this whole part. If it were a full song, I'd more than likely swap that for a multi-band, because I'll probably be doing more things than just chugging. And then we're just kind of bringing the tone a little back to life with the revival. But nah, we're boosting a little bit of this almost 5K 4.6. That just kind of helps it cut a little more in the mix in a pleasing way. Sucking out a little bit of this 1.6 because it just sounded kind of weird. And boosting a weird spot. But I guess for, you know, standard, I'm used to only boosting if I need low-end guitars around like sub 110, because I'm normally playing in drop tunings, but I find that the fundamental for E is somewhere in this spectrum. So, and I felt it needed a little more low-end, a little more girth, just to kind of mesh with everything. And it just works. Without it in the full mix, it sounds pretty thin and lifeless. It just helps it mesh a lot better with the bass. And then revival. Kind of doing the same thing, just broadening the low end in a more pleasing way, and then just adding some top as well. And then I'm trimming them so they kind of, you know, are tamed and stay in a place. This is also interchangeable with a multiband or just like a limiter in general, but I figured since Slate Vmr has it in here, may as well just use it. It's there. But yeah, that's guitar sound. Nothing too crazy. Bass is where we kind of get interesting. I said it was boring and not interesting before, but it actually very much is, because it's, you know, the craziness that goes on with it being split and whatnot. But yeah, as many of you probably are aware of this technique, it's just being split into 3 different tracks. They're all doing different things. This is a sub. This is like a mid chonk. Oh Lord, he coming. And some kind of, not sawtooth, it's not like a crazy balls deep tone, but it's kind of just enough to get the why is it all the way down? Just enough to get the pick attack coming through. Now on their own they very much sound like garbage, but if you know this technique, that's kind of, you know, the point, or why that is. When it all comes together, it's pretty sweet sound, actually. Very dark classy in a way, just with how the drive is shaped. But I will just quickly go through the bass. Why not, right? So yeah, for this sub, I'm actually doing more than you'd expect. So I'll kill it all, see how it started life. There's a cute little DI. Compressed a bit of it on the way in, just to kind of tame some of the really sharp attacks. Hit some EQ. Cut off, you know, somewhere around here, just to concentrate on that low end. Bittersweet, which is a really cool Flux plugin. Really nice on drum pieces. If you don't have any like really thwacky compressors, this will work really well in the bitter mode. You just boost that and you get this really like attacky, but sometimes can be kind of papery sound, which, you know, for dense things might work. Dense mixes, it'll work, but something like this, I feel you need something a little more full, which is why you didn't see it on my snare chain. But I am using it on the bass, and this is in the sweet side of things to kind of remove the transient, which I find really also smooths out the low end a bit more otherwise. Very subtle, but I feel it helps. Compressing it once more on the way out, just so those fundamentals are really kind of held down in place. And then just a little post EQ again to kind of take away the things that the compression might have added on the way. As well as this gnarly little thing here. That's the low end, then we got the mids. Similar deal, just kind of moving it up the spectrum, chopping off a lot of the dynamic in the beginning, EQing just to get this nice little midsection going, because that's really all you need for this track. May as well loop it, right? Right. TSE to kind of get that nice drivey sound that we all like in a bass tone, a proggy bass tone. Again, also reinforcing that initial EQ, because something like a drive will bring that back out. And then some another more compression at the end, just to round it out. And then, yeah, almost same deal with the top. Compression on the way in, standard. EQ in that spectrum that I want. Now this one we're getting pretty heavy with the drive, and it just sounds very pleasing. Reinforcing it, and compressing it again. And all together that comes into this. Oh, and yeah, the bus processing on that guy. So without it, it literally just sounds like 3 individual tracks. But then once you get this processing going, it really glues the tone together. For this one, we're just kind of shaping it, boosting the high end, sucking out some weird honky mids, boosting or lowering, cutting off the low of the high pass. Then VMR once more. This is where a majority of the processing is going down. This is the magic. This suite right here. I highly suggest you get your hands on it. It is like everything I ever needed that I never thought I needed. Compressing it on the way in, just to tame it. A little EQ, boosting a lot of that kind of like scrapey-ish area, just to get it to cut through the guitars. Taking out some of this kind of weird 1.4 or 1.1. With that kind of sound is coming through. Sucking out some mids that just really don't need to be there that much. You don't need to nuke them. That's the thing a lot of people do with a bass guitar. Kind of just neuters the sound if you nuke all those mids, because they actually do. You need them to some degree. Otherwise, you just get a really separated sound. And I'm just kind of boosting the fundamental down here, or subs, whatever you call it. And we're using a little revival once more, adding some top, adding some bottom in a pleasing way, and then some actually kind of mild compression on the way out, just to kind of keep it in check, but nothing crazy. It'll vibe with this one a little more. Actually kind of brings out some low end in it. That's cool. Then we have this little lead guitar here that was also done with the same tone, essentially. Show you what I have going on for it. So yeah, not a whole lot going on because the tone, like I said, out of it's just too good. I find that with EQing leads, taking out the furthest ends of the spectrum actually kind of helps it to sit without kind of intruding on other instruments. Like if I were to keep this high end in it, it's subtle, but I feel that it really helps kind of focus it in a way which is, it sounds like it'd be counterintuitive because you're removing part of the frequency spectrum from it, but not removing, just taming. But I don't know. Then we hit it with the VMR. Probably overkill, but I think it sounds pretty. I'll show you. Very subtle, just boosting a little around that area that I had on the other guitars. Taking out a tiny bit of that 3.1. Adding some 612. That's an interesting move. Oh yeah, there's like some nice kind of like richness in there that helps it kind of cut through in a different spot. You don't normally see this area in guitars a whole lot, but for here I thought it was nice to get a nice Halloween-ness to help it kind of come through. Revival and thickness, you know how it do. Mainly for that low end, just kind of like how it, you know, the way I kind of attack the strings, it makes those come through a little nicer. And then a trimmer once more, just to keep the guitar in check. That's pretty, well, I mean, I have these synths here. I could show you how they work, but I also forgot to run you through the parallel processing. So specifically on the drums here, all of the shells are getting this parallel track, getting sent to this parallel track down here. And on it, I have the monster, 2 stages of compression. And this is just kind of obliterating the sound. If I could figure out how to show you what that just sounds like on its own. There it is. So without, and then with. Oh, you know what? No, I'm not using 2 stages of compression. I didn't realize this is off. So yeah, I'm only using this one. I guess I trialed this one and it didn't sound that great. Yeah, I guess I just wasn't really a fan of that weird hype-driven thing. This I find gives it a little more sustain and punch. And yeah, that's going on the shells, as I said, in varying amounts. And then we have I believe a reverb dedicated for the snare. But other things are getting it as well. And then this one, which I think is for the cymbals. Yes. And that's the same deal. This is a free plugin, and it is my favorite reverb that I've used thus far, aside from like the Isotope and maybe the IRL reverb from Waves. If you're into something free, that's probably my go-to reverb. There's just a lot of nice presets too that really kind of helps you get a sound. In this instance, the default was the way to go. I set it up, threw it on the cymbals, and it just had a nice kind of shimmery glue, almost, I'd call it, to connect the sound, connect the hits. But yeah. And then we have these interesting little synths that I start the song out with. Cool little diddly there. Dext, another free synth, using one of their presets, Pharaoh, with some light modifications, nothing crazy, just to get a kind of cool like little bass sound. Then a little EQ just to kind of filter it, almost the way I have on these guitars to kind of focus that range and make it sit. A little delay. Just to kind of get a sustain out of it. And then some in the box Reaper chorus, which I find is kind of vibey. Kind of gives it that like old school, like analog vintage vibe that you get out of like a organ or something, minus the crackling and distortion and all that. I don't know, I just thought it sounded pretty pleasing, and that sits in pretty nicely. Provides a nice atmosphere. And then we're almost done, because the last thing is this mix bus I've got going on, and as you could tell, Slate is on it because it needs to be on everything. That's just the law governing the universe at this point, or in this case, my mix. So yeah, start off with a little not stage compression. There is stage compression, but it's not starting with it because we got this guy in the middle here. Oddball in the middle. Just acting as glue, tightening everything together, kind of more so acting on those drum peaks. Nice to keep it all rounded off and, you know, put a leash on it. Nah, mean. Then we got Revival here. Nothing crazy, just boosting a little bit of the high and the low end because it's pleasing. It's aurally pleasing. Let's you know, not beat around the bush here. It sounds nice. And then this guy just kind of really making sure that those drum transients aren't super strong on the way out. It'll only act on the really offensive ones. And it just sounds kind of nice. I don't know what this is. I guess I was just using it as a frequency, or yeah, a spectrum analyzer for what that was doing. And then just some limiting, just to make it nice and loud. And that yields this. But yeah, the only real other thing that kind of makes this thing vibe is just how the drums were tabbed. But I can get into that in a future video if you want to know how I get these program drums to sort of vibe like a real player. There's some tips that can go a long way in that department. If this takes off, that might be my next topic. So yeah. Thanks so much for checking this out, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Ooh, breaking the fourth wall. What has he done?